Hello and welcome to the Work That Matters podcast. My name is Shannon Elizabeth Eastman. I am your host, and I am on a wee crusade to rope in some experts in the area of wealth building, particularly for business owners and entrepreneurs. And I've come across this chap named Bob Quinn, financial advisor, planner, who's got such a bonkers way of looking. When I say bonkers, I mean, well, there's not going to be any gray suits, white hair, middle-aged white male who's giving you an introduction to the world of pensions. That is not what you get when you meet Bob. So when I say bonkers, he's just got such an approach that just bucks the trend. He's practical, he's definitely opinionated, and he doesn't have time for the status quo unless it's in the best possible effort for his client, which is cool. So Bob is back doing a series on wealth building, and this one is really, it's interesting and it can be boring. I'm going to say that now, but it's important. So regardless of whether I find it fascinating and riveting, I find wealth building fascinating and riveting, and understanding the insights and the structure and the perspectives that need to maybe be considered in your effort to wealth build means digging in and understanding some of the bits that you otherwise would have ignored. So what can I tell you about Bob? Well, he's been here a few times. I've now dubbed him a bit of a renegade. He's funny. I'm not sure he knows he's funny. That's why he's even funnier. But he's practical, and did I mention he's opinionated? He's over on Twitter, talking up a storm. He's definitely on LinkedIn, and now he's doing a few of these podcasts. So if he's interesting to you, you can pop over there and find him and connect. Or S.I.P.A, an acronym, or something that you'll probably never be able to forget after you hear it. Okay, thank you for being here and enjoy the show. So you're back. This is part 3 or 4 of our wealth building session with Bob Quinn, financial advisor, just up the road from me in Kildare, Ireland. And Bob, are you a fan of donkeys?
Wonky donkeys. Are we talking about what kind of donkeys?
Wonky Donkey is actually a good name. I feel like I need to write an article now. So what you guys missed, because I didn't hit record in time, was I was asking Bob to tell me a bit more about himself. Like, has he been interviewed by Interpol? And is he wanted in any state? Or, interesting stuff that you'd like to know about someone before you get them to look after your finances. And I was just offering up one of my stories. When I was living in the Middle East, I was running an online program at Teach a Brand to Fish, and I definitely have a love for donkeys. I love donkeys so much. So I bought a box of peaches and I went over to the field to seduce this donkey into being my friend. And I had a little dongle.
Internet dongle. You're doing the actual, I can see you and you're holding your hand up, but this is a podcast, so there are no visual aids. So a dongle might mean a whole variety of things to different people. Internet dongle.
An internet dongle. So anyway, the donkey ate my dongle.
Donkey ate my dongle. Now that sounds like a children's bestseller, because there is a book called The Wonky Donkey, which I have read on many occasions to my 5-year-old. It's a winky, wonky, stinky, dinky, something wonky donkey. And it basically keeps on unfolding. And this poor donkey doesn't have an eye, only has 3 legs, has BO problems, doesn't have like a full mouth of teeth. A lot of problems for the wonky donkey. And it sounds like if your donkey friend who you're trying to bribe with peaches ate an internet dongle, they might also have some sort of problems as well.
Well, I'm thinking, he's wandering the desert. It was in Jordan, in Amman, just outside Amman, in Salt. And I think that donkey was literally like providing Wi-Fi to the desert.
He's able to send emails, right?
Yeah,
Deep in the Middle East, here he is typing away his emails because he's now connected to Shannon's internet.
Can you imagine being at a Bedouin camp and this donkey walks by and all of a sudden your phone that had no signal now has a Wi-Fi signal and you're over at the donkey being like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That would be funny. So anyway, so you don't like donkeys.
I don't dislike donkeys. Friends of mine have 3 donkeys
There in Kildare.
Down in Narramore, yeah.
Is Narramore in Kildare?
Yeah, it's not too far from Athy. Athy is also in. How is your Kildare geography, Shannon? Maybe we need to start there. Yeah,
it's non-existent. It's non-existent. But I was just thinking that, you should invite me up to do a podcast or something, at your friend's house with their donkeys.
Donkeys aren't great for interviewing, though, to be honest. They're animals of few words.
I just love them. If I had a farm out in the country, I'd have 2 donkeys. I'd name one Jasmine and the other Aladdin.
Jasmine? Anyway. Oh, I say right. Magic carpet. Yeah, I got you.
So, magic carpet. Yeah. We are, so the topic for today is quite fun. Speaking of donkeys and dongles, we have devils in our S.I.P.A.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about what you're doing with wealth building, Bob, is that you're making it accessible and easy to understand. And in my case, remember, because I actually remember what S.I.P.A means. And for someone who doesn't work in the industry or have a high value on learning it, you just make it so easy and accessible. So thank you. But devils in your S.I.P.A, I'm going to bounce the ball over to you. And get you to introduce us to S.I.P.A, what it means and what we need to know about it before you start talking to us about the devils that are dancing their way through them.
Okay, well, first of all, just to recap what we've done over the previous podcast, well, we're talking about wealth building in particular. And if we look at what you need to do to actually increase your asset base, ensuring that you're living the best possible life you can, because you're somewhat financially independent. It involves typically 4 aspects within that wealth building quadrant. And S.I.P.A, one by one, is S is savings, I investments, P pensions, and A assets. And they're all.
Time?
S are your savings, I are your investments, P are your pensions, and A is your asset base.
Got it.
S.I.P.A. And what we want to keep in mind is they're all interconnected and intertwined somehow. But we want to ensure that we can clearly see what the difference between S, I, P, and A is. Because if we approach
the difference,
I'm
not sure I could tell you what the difference is looking at them. I know I'm familiar with all the individual words now.
Yeah.
I have heard them before.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I'd want to take a stab at unpacking them here. So I'm going to let you do that as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to try and keep this simple and straightforward. The bottom line is, when it comes down to it, we need to ensure that as life rolls on, we have pots of money dropping into our hands as it's required. But if you are only spending €100 today or €1,000,000 tomorrow, you simply want to have your finances arranged in such a way that whatever you need today, it's all about this present moment. Whatever you need in this present moment, you want to ensure that you have your finances arranged in such a way that what you need is going to drop into your hand at the appropriate time. So let's start with today and how we need to project forward probably 6 months and then 5 years and then 5+ years. So there's 3 kind of aspects to it. The immediate future from now until 6 months time, the medium-term future from now to 5 years time, and then 5 years onwards. So think in your mind, just kind of visualize this, a life timeline from now until the end of your life. And assume you're going to live to be 100.
Jesus.
Okay.
Go
we
on.
know there's a few things on the horizon. What's going to cause you to spend money in the next few weeks? Well, I don't know when this podcast is going to go out, but ho, ho, ho! It's almost
Christmas
2020. So you're going to spend money, whether it's socially distant socializing or turkey or travel or whatever it might be. So you need to ensure that you've money set aside. to fall into your hand as you requires for your socializing over Christmas. So that's an immediate thing. We also know that if your main mechanism of earning right now is by going out and grafting day by day and getting paid for an honest day's work, we need to ensure that if there's any disruption to that you're on a PUP payment, or you have to take a temporary reduction in salary, or you become ill, or whatever it might be, there are reasons why our cash flows can become interrupted. So S in savings means you want to look at from 0 to 6 months and say, okay, it's the type of thing that the 6 months keeps on moving out day by day. So there will always be an up to a 6 month time horizon. So what we're looking at is, are there any potential disruptions? Are there any potential one-off or intermittent calls on our cash? You got to get the car service, it's going to cost you X. It's back to school time for a lot of families, sort of it's September time and whatever else. So it's expensive. So you're arranging your finance in such a way that your pot of savings goes towards smoothing out the rough edges, ensuring your cash flow is consistent. So that's why we talk about savings. Needs to be accessible, needs to be of a certain level depending on what your lifestyle is, needs to take into consideration what you've coming down the track from 0 to 6 months' time. And that's the type of thing you keep on looking at, because 0 to 6 months' time, a lot of these things that are being produced, that are making demands of our cash flow, that we want to make sure that we have sufficient cash set aside for these things. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. I like it.
All right. Number 2, investments. This is for when you're old and gray, or not, perhaps. You might decide, you know what? I want to retire by 50. So the surplus income you have today, the stuff you don't spend, surplus to requirements, should not go into a savings account where it earns nothing or possibly negative interest rates.
Okay.
So you're probably talking 5+ years of an investment time horizon that of the money you're setting aside today, chances are it will not be required within the next 5 years. So what do? We invest it. We let capital markets do the work while you're asleep, while you're snowboarding, while you're having your internet dongle eaten by Jasmine or Aladdin in the Middle East. That the money you have managed to accumulate and set aside is working hard for you.
Global diversified investments.
Globally diversified always. Yes.
I learned that from you. We'll talk about that later because
yeah.
I can say it, but I'm not sure I know what it means. Okay, so my savings is being monitored and assessed 0 to 6 months out. So when I see things on the horizon, I'm adjusting for those accordingly. Investments is 5 years. So the money I'm putting away, I'm very happy. Just tuck that away for 5+ years, 5 to 10 years.
5+ years,
and always globally diversified.
Yeah.
Then my pension. Talk to me about my pension.
Yeah, pension. Let's try and take the air of mystery out of this. Your pension is simply a Revenue Commissioner's approved long-term savings contract that's tax efficient. That's all it is. It's exactly the same as the I in S.I.P.A. It's investments, albeit wrapped up in a revenue approved tax efficient structure. That means if you put money into it and you have earned income, you get a significant tax break on it. That's all it is. Same as your investments. There's no trickery or wizardry that goes on in the background here. It's simply a way for you to accumulate a lot more money for use at a date in the future because of the generous tax reliefs that the Revenue Commissioners allow you.
I like it. It's also, I've heard rumors that, there are certain permissions that are granted to you where you could borrow against your pension fund at certain times of the year.
There's depending on how you want to invest the proceeds within your pension pot, There's lots of different options available to you. So, a self-administered pension fund is what you're talking about. To be honest, the details of that come at a later stage, because what we want to do in the first instance in the whole S.I.P.A arrangement is ensure that you have your asset base within S.I.P.A arranged in such a way that you know when you need the money, what it's for, and you've got a clear look through, I suppose, and ultimately what you're going to spend your money on now and in the future. And so when it comes along to, I suppose, looking at the investment strategy, both within your pension and outside of your pension, that will largely determine what type of pension structure you want and need, and whether or not borrowing should become part of that. But to be honest, keeping things simple and straightforward probably means you don't need to go down that route. But if you embrace capital markets and what capital markets are all about, all you need to do is set money aside. Don't spend it today, keep it for tomorrow. Set it aside in a revenue-proof long-term savings contract, aka a pension.
Got it.
Unless markets do the rest for you.
Okay, so have we covered the P for pension?
Yeah, we can come back to it in more detail, but for the most part, yeah, absolutely.
The A in S.I.P.A is assets.
Yeah.
So this is my house. This is my Harley Davidson.
Yeah, absolutely. And in actual fact, look, your asset base is probably SI and P altogether, equaling assets. Because when we look at a balance sheet for you, if you like, we'd be putting on your savings, your investments, and your pensions. And that would include, or that would be predominantly your asset base. But what I like about divvying it up as S.I.P.A, it means that what we do not capture within the S.I. and P, we kind of can funnel off into the asset base, and that is your house. Like, you know what, for the most part, we buy smaller houses, or houses that we can comfortably afford. But here's the thing. The bigger a house you can buy and get most use out of it for the next 20 years, will leave you with a higher net worth in time.
Say that one more time.
The bigger house you can buy today and make use of it while you have maybe a young family, for instance, more people under the one roof, that your net worth is typically going to be higher long term.
Makes sense.
So you have to live somewhere always. But in 20 years' time, the kids are all grown up and gone off to college and doing their own thing. You decide to downsize. That capital that you've tied up within that particular asset is released back to you, because you're selling a big house to buy a smaller house, because you don't need that same space. And the difference between what you're spending on your new, smaller house and what you sell your big family home for is money that goes into your arse pocket and takes you globe trotting, meeting all types of donkeys in all parts of the world. It's probably a metaphor.
Say my arse pocket.
In your arse pocket, yeah.
That's an Irish is a word you've not come across before. My arse pocket.
Arse pocket. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, as you said, like that, your asset base as well, your assets should always, as far as I'm concerned, be globally diversified. And if we're looking at an investment philosophy, the important thing across the S.I.P. and A is that you have one investment philosophy. One investment philosophy that you can adhere to, because a lot of people, as markets can chop and change and go up and down, a lot of people don't necessarily understand how they're invested or what they're invested in. So they cash in their pensions and their investments and they run a mile because they just don't know what they're dealing with. So what I guess I'm trying to get at is when you're stitching together S.I.P.A, and you're looking at all your assets under the one roof, you want them invested in such a way that's compatible with who and what you are. For instance, what we do a lot of in the Money Advisors over the last year, 2 or 3 in particular, is we have an approach to sustainability, using clients' money to invest on an impactful basis, trying to assist in climate change and these type of green initiatives today.
I heard your podcast with Daniel Lawler over on a Quest on ESG.
Yeah.
it was really interesting. I would never have considered it from an individual investor choosing which fund or portfolio I wanted to kick my few cents into.
Yeah.
How long have you been involved in that? Just curious. Has that always been important to you?
Yeah, the last couple of years in particular, and recently I was elected to what's known as the LCDC, the Local Community Development Committee here in County Kildare. And so it gives me bird's eye view as one of a committee of 19 in looking at where funding goes and what type of projects we can support from leader funding and local authority funding and all that type of stuff. So it's now, at this point in time, it's never been so important. And the more I go out talking to people about impactful investing and the role of climate change and how we can use our own assets to actually further particular causes, I didn't realize it until more recently that there's so many people so motivated in using their capital to do good. And it's that motivation too. If you think, oh, pensions, boring, put me to sleep talking about this type of stuff. But if I could say to you, hold on a minute, what if we can use the money within your pension fund to invest in some environmentally conscientious investment that will do good for planet Earth? Suddenly your pension scheme and your pension fund becomes a bit more interesting because you can pursue your own values through the fund you've accumulated up to this point in time.
Yeah. And I saw the notes for a conversation that you and I are having next week on the meaningful. So the Money Advisors has a methodology, which you just alluded to here with regards to, being committed to one methodology that guides and governs your finances. And your methodology is the W.I.S.D.O.M methodology, the W.I.S.D.O.M being an acronym, and the M in wisdom representing what is meaningful. What inspires you, what changes pensions from a ho-hum, I'm a bit bored talking about it, to a vehicle that allows me to fulfill what's really important to me. I'm really looking forward to that conversation next week. I love how this is all coming together. So S.I.P.A, savings, investment, pensions, and assets. Savings is for my 0 to 6 months that I'm assessing and monitoring and course correcting. My investments are 5 to 10 years, and it's money I don't want to spend today. I'm saving it for tomorrow, so to speak. My pension is a contract that revenue allows me to have access to with a few tax perks along the way. And assets is kind of like this bucket that allows me to put all the extra bits in it that didn't fit neatly into the S.I.P, but essentially S.I.P are my assets as well.
Yeah. I kind of think that if I split it out, I'd say the assets part of S.I.P.A actually brings them all nicely together. It acts as a full stop or a period, which means S-I and P equals A. But we can use the A also to add in those extra bits that we haven't neatly accounted for in the S, I, and P. And, the reason why I love this particular methodology, and I have to keep driving this home, is because once you have this methodology in place, it's like learning to drive. It becomes intuitive once you know. Once it's in place, you don't have to be getting your highlighters out and printing off your bank statements going, oh, where did I spend the money last month? I need to get on top of this. Because when it becomes intuitive, it's registered in your brain. You don't have to think about it. Like you take your next breath, it just automatically happens. That when we have this methodology set up for you, and when I help you and guide you to implement it, you don't need me after that. You've got it sorted. You've got it sussed. So many people come to me having spent a lifetime with this deep-rooted anxiety inside their chest, where it wakes them up in the middle of the night, not because they're poor, not because they can't make ends meet, but because they know they could be doing things so much better, and it's killing them because they're not. And talking about, we will have the conversation next week, whenever, about a meaningful existence. There comes a point in a person's life, maybe not in your 20s or 30s, but as the years roll by and you've dealt with, putting out the fires from not having any money and trying to buy your first house and, buying a banger of a car, whatever it might be. You've put out all those fires. You now start to turn inwards and say, right, what is my place on this planet? What good can I do? And that sense of altruism maybe comes to the fore, typically somewhere in your 40s or possibly 50s. So what I want to say to anyone listening to this particular podcast, Shannon, is take action now. Because if you can reduce or eliminate that anxiety that has plagued you for the last 20 years, and knowing that there's a double benefit to this, your anxiety reduces or is gone in its entirety, and you're having a more meaningful impact with your money based on how it's been invested. That's a double win. Yeah. There are no losers in this.
Well, it's it goes back. I know I bring this up every time I talk to you, but your degree of anxiety about what money is a real thing. Those gremlins are real. But if you think about the impact that anxiety has in other areas of your life, it is causing a friction or a lack of. Say that again.
A contagion effect.
That's the word. It is a contagion effect. And so that has been, I say it every time, but that just hit me right between the eyes when I heard you say that. So I agree. Take me back to devils. There's devils in my S.I.P.A, and I want to know what they are, because at the moment, I don't know that anything's wrong with them.
There's a couple of things that we sleepwalk into, and I have to keep on pulling people back. And the biggest devil of all is unnecessary debt.
Unnecessary debt. Is debt is it a thing? Is it a real thing? Big thing? Too many of us have it. Too many of us have too much of it.
Yeah. Basically, we are spending money on stuff that is not aligned with our own personal values, and it's coming at a significant cost. And part of that is a simple example. A new car, which is going to cost you €500 a month, which is going to depreciate by 70% in 5 years. And you need to get from point A to point B. That's fine. And you can't do it on a bike because it's too far, or you're bringing people with you. But we're taking on a level of debt that is totally unnecessary, but we feel as though almost like we've an obligation to do so. Everyone's out there selling us the additional safety features from the new car, even though the car that's 5 years old isn't necessarily any less safe than the one you're being told you need to buy today. So, it's that needs to be considered. So car debt is an obvious devil, because what you're spending in paying down that debt is being denied as a future pension contribution, a future investment in your globally diversified fund. It's denying you a lesser quality of life, or a better quality of life, because you've all this money going on something which is totally unnecessary. So the biggest devil is overburdening yourself with unnecessary debt. Now, one other thing I just want to say in relation to it, and I don't want to be sounding preachy on this. And oftentimes when we talk about debt, particularly car debt, which thousands of people have in this country, it sounds a bit preachy. And I get that. But look at it this way, there's good debt and bad debt. If you're a traveling salesperson and you travel the length and breadth of the country day in, day out, you need a car which is not going to let you down. I get that. So there's two reasons I'd say buy a car and buy a new car, because you are that traveling salesperson. You need to ensure that if you're up in Derry today and down in Cork tomorrow, that you got something which is comfortable. The second reason you might decide to buy something really swanky is because you really love cars. I don't have any objection to people buying really nice cars that cost a huge amount of money. Hold on. You said I could actually use the SHIT word in your podcast. So a shitload of money is what I meant to say, right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. God, I feel better already.
Well, what you're saying is if cars are meaningful to you,
Absolutely.
Go have at her, because that is meaning in your life. But if you're buying that car to keep up with the Joneses or to deal with some insecurity of your own, then you might want to be invited to just pause and reflect. I got it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You know what? It's all about being able to say, my values as a person are X, Y, and Z. And if your money is being spent on the things that reinforce your value, then I have absolutely no objection to it whatsoever. But look at it this way, good debt versus bad debt. Yeah. You take out a big loan to do your PhD. That's going to have real meaningful impact on your future, because you're doing some of the highest level, or you're doing a master's, or you're taking your family away for a much needed break. Spend time away from Wi-Fi zones and broadband, and your dongle has been eaten by the donkey, and suddenly you and your kids finally get to have a conversation which you haven't had in 5 years. That, I would suggest, is good debt. But there's too much stuff out there that goes into the bucket of bad debt, unnecessary debt. Don't take it on, because you're cannibalizing your future. You're cannibalizing your sense of financial safety and security. And that's what I really have to warn about. Devils in your S.I.P.As. If you take on too much debt, unsustainable debt, which isn't aligned with your values, you're going to sink yourself financially in the future.
So another devil.
Yeah.
I think I have one, but I want to see if it's in your list. So another devil on your side is what?
Let me see. Well, the debt one is number one. Number two would have to be what you're putting into S.I.P.A. If you have, and we talked about
diversified is all I'm putting into S.I.P.A.
Well, what I'm saying is not necessarily saying a devil is not global diversification. Devil is having an incoherent investment strategy, one where you haven't a clue where your money's gone, how it's invested, who has their hands on it. And remember, we covered it off before. The more people that are involved in running your investment portfolio, the less that's left behind for you.
Oh, no, you said it best when you said money is like a bar of soap. The more you touch it, the more it disappears.
Absolutely.
That's such a good one. But I appreciate you just said the same thing. Okay, go on.
Yeah, and just to give you a really quick example, we as Irish people love investing in property. Love it. Buy a house, buy an apartment, get people in, rent it out. It's all good. But just to give you a quick top to bottom type of idea as to who's involved in buying a property. You decide, you know what, I got money sitting in my bank account, it's earning nothing. I know what I'll do. I'll buy a house in Terranure or Nace or wherever it might be. So you decide to call up the local auctioneer. So just keep account of this. You call up the local auctioneer. You say, hey, I want to buy that house in Terranure. Perfect. He brings you out, you look at the house. You have 50% down payment, but you need to borrow for the balance of 50%. So you go to the bank, you get your mortgage underwritten. You then have to take out maybe life insurance on it. You then have to contact an insurance company to get the insurance on the house. You then need to bring in some sort of a structural engineer to do a report. You get tenants in, you register them with your TB. You got to collect rent every single month. You got to do a tax return. You got to get somebody in to actually repair the flat roof that broke last winter. That's 10 parties I've counted just there. Then you decide to sell it at 3 years, in 3 years' time. You got to give notice to your tenants that you're selling the property. You got to contact the real estate agent again. It goes on and on and on. There's too many people involved in that equation. If one of them goes rogue, you're in big trouble. If the insurance company hikes up the premium alone, that's just one thing. If your tenants decide, you know what, I never liked your man anyhow, I don't care if I bust up his house. You're investing for one reason, to provide you with greater financial security in the future. You will want to make a return on your capital for your future lifestyle and your family's financial security. At what point did you ever think investing in a property was going to help you achieve that goal? Don't do it. There's easier ways to make a return on your capital, which in turn will provide you with a greater level of financial security in the future. That's what it's all about.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so that's 3 devils technically. Are there any more devils in my S.I.P.As?
There's loads. We could go on and on. A few other bits and pieces is depending on how you actually arrange your savings, investments, pensions, and assets. We talked about global diversification. We talked about overburdening yourself with debt, but we need to also talk about how you get access to the various different investments and savings plans and what you pay to access them.
The devil in the early access for sure.
So contracts, investment contracts are structured in a whole myriad of ways. And it means you may be paying money up front to get access to particular types of investments. Money up front with nobody there to support you for the investment term is a bad idea. That's why when we look at a lot of insurance contracts have what's known as early encashment penalties. They pay commissions up front to the introducer, but that introducer then maybe walks away if things get tough. It's a terrible way to structure an investment. So whoever recommends the investment to you should be outlining in contract whereby they're sticking with you long term. They're there to guide you, provide advice and support if and when it's necessary. This idea that someone sell you an investment today and walk away tomorrow is nonsense. So be very careful what you're paying for and who you're engaging at the point of purchase. Because when there is some sort of global financial meltdown, who's advising you at that point in time? Is it the person who sold you the investment, or are they nowhere to be seen? So that's a pretty significant devil as well.
To recap, I have a saving, investment, pension, asset, S.I.P.A. The devils in it that I should be mindful of are tied to overburdening myself with debt, using an incoherent strategy, or not being completely unconscious that I'm using it or not using it. Ideally, one focused strategy, the W.I.S.D.O.M methodology. How about that? Early access and the type of financial advisors that I'm engaging, because you're right. I shake your hand, I sign up today, but I never see you again is a very valid devil. I've experienced that myself. Helpful. And I feel more confident in understanding this piece of wealth building. And I think as we continue to engage on, we're talking about triple D.
Yeah.
Can I say what it means?
Go for it.
Death? No. Damn it. Divorce, dementia, death. You put them in
order of
no,
yeah.
Divorce. Did I say divorce first?
Yeah, divorce, dementia, yeah.
And then death.
Yeah, all the fun stuff.
I know, you're just a bundle of laughs, aren't you, Bob?
Yeah.
Any final words before we wrap up devils in your S.I.P.A?
Yeah, well, just remember the opposite to global diversification. We've mentioned it a few times before. Well, maybe I'll ask you. You're the one doing the interviewing, but I'm going to ask you. What's the opposite to global diversification? Because there are two words that we think, yeah, okay, that sounds sure, yeah. But what's the opposite to us?
Singular.
Yeah. Investing in one.
Not diversified, not split up, not shared across different baskets. I put all my eggs in the one basket out in my back garden.
My grandmother, and I think everyone's grandmother in this country at least, would have rattled off that expression big back in the 1980s, don't put all your eggs in the one basket. And we'd be possibly quick to dismiss Granny Ferguson saying such a thing until you actually look at the practical application of such a wise expression. So investing in single entities or single securities, as we call them, is Ryanair shares or an apartment in City West, or a single entity whereby you could have one board of directors or senior executive management team that if they fail, the house of cards comes crashing down. Global diversification, there's 10,000 securities in your particular portfolio or whatever. So it's like you may not know what global diversification is. But so I want to say that the starting point, if you want to do your homework, the starting point is know what the opposite to global diversification is. And if you know then that the opposite is single shares, single investments or investments in single firms, for instance, a narrow focus on investments that if something happens to that one particular security, you might be totally screwed. That's where you start off. So start eliminating the things that don't look like global diversification. Start looking at what looks like too much debt. And when we're looking at that in particular, look at it from the prism that the earnings you're making today are not necessarily guaranteed tomorrow. So if you do have car loans and debt on these properties that you own and you don't necessarily live in, if something happens to your income at some point in the future and it tanks, you have to take a big pay cut through illness or accident or redundancy or whatever, will you still be able to afford all your debt obligations then? So we're not necessarily talking about today. We're talking about what happens tomorrow if there's a wobble, if there's an unforeseen event. And can you keep everything on track? Keep funding your pensions, your investments, your savings. Important to have a rainy day fund should something happen as well. And then your asset base. You want your asset base to accumulate bit by bit, year by year, knowing that as you're paying down debt and increasing your asset base, you get to that sweet spot. You're debt-free with assets. You're now what we call financially independent. It's the best position you find yourself in, and you want to do that before you're 90 years of age because you want to step away from the day job at some point. Yeah. You want to pursue your most meaningful life. And you can't do that if you're chained to a desk doing something that you don't necessarily love.
Bob, thank you for being here. Thank you for your stories and your context and for making this easy to understand and access. It's really cool. Final word before I bid you farewell.
I suspect I've said enough. A word of warning. If you ever find yourself in the Middle East with a dongle in your hand, remain socially distant from
your arse pocket.
Put it in your arse pocket, exactly. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that works.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Bob, take care. Thanks for being on here.
Adios. Cheers.
The Work That Matters podcast, it's brought to you by ShannonEastman.com.